The wind swept across the desert, carrying sand and sorrow together. 4 Apache children, Taya, Noka, Loma, and the youngest, little Kai, moved through the dry canyons like ghosts. Their village had fallen silent months ago, burned and abandoned after soldiers came through. Since then, they had only each other, the stars above, and the sound of the wind calling their names. They survived by moving, by staying unseen, by sharing what little the earth offered. Until one day, they saw a rider, a lone stranger, lying face down beside his horse, half buried in sand. Taya approached first, wary but brave. The man wasn't dead, only breathing weakly. His canteen was empty, his face blistered by the sun. He looked like he'd been through hell. "White man," whispered Noka. "Maybe he's trouble." "Maybe," Taya said quietly, "but we can't leave him." Together, the orphans dragged the stranger into a patch of shade under the rocks. They poured the last of their water on his cracked lips. He stirred, coughed, and his eyes fluttered open, gray, stormy, confused. "Where am I?" he rasped. "In Apache lands," Taya answered. "You were dying." He looked at the children, 4 thin faces, dirty but determined. He tried to sit up, wincing. "My name's Eli Cooper. I didn't think anyone'd still be out here." "You were wrong," said Loma flatly. They nursed him for days. They shared the little dried meat they had, built a fire, watched him heal. He told them he'd once been a rancher, that bandits had stolen his herd and left him for dead. His land, his pride, his future, gone. When he could finally stand again, he looked at the 4 children and said, "I owe you my life." Taya shrugged. "We helped you because it's right." Eli smiled faintly. "Then let me do what's right in return." He offered to take them with him, back to the edge of the frontier, to a patch of land he still owned by the mountains. The children hesitated. They'd only ever known loss. But something in his voice, quiet, honest, made them believe. The journey was long. They rode through dust storms, crossed rivers, and slept under the same stars. Slowly, Eli taught them ranch work, how to shoe a horse, mend a fence, break a colt. The orphans brought life to his land again. The sound of laughter returned to a place once cursed by silence. Taya grew into a young woman, strong, proud, with eyes that saw everything. Eli often watched her from the porch, amazed by her courage. She reminded him of the desert itself, harsh, beautiful, and full of hidden life. Years passed, and the ranch flourished. The locals whispered about the Apache Ranch, a place run by 4 orphans and 1 broken man. Some mocked, others admired, but none dared challenge them, not after they saw how fiercely they stood together. Then one day, a letter arrived from the town sheriff. Eli's old enemies, the bandits who'd ruined him, had been spotted nearby. The news lit a fire in him he thought was long gone. He saddled his horse, ready to ride alone. But when he turned, the 4 stood before him. Taya spoke for all of them. "You don't ride alone anymore." They rode out together at dawn. The tracks led them into the canyon where Eli had nearly died years ago, the same place the children had found him. The circle of fate closed quietly. When the bandits appeared, there was no chaos, no shouting, only resolve. The fight wasn't long. It ended with Eli standing tall again, the ghosts of his past finally laid to rest. When they returned, Eli sat the children down. His voice was rough with emotion. "You saved me twice, once from death, once from myself. I've got no bloodkin left, but if you'll have me, this land, this ranch, it's yours now." "All of it." The 4 stared at him, stunned. "You mean, we own it?" whispered Noka. Eli smiled. "You always did, I just hadn't written it down." They cried then, even the quiet ones. The papers were signed, the seal pressed. The Cooper Ranch became 4 Winds Ranch, named for each of them. Years later, travelers passing through would still see 4 riders herding cattle across the plains, the Apache siblings who owned a stretch of land bigger than some towns. And at the heart of it, an old ranch house stood with a chair on the porch, empty now except for a worn hat resting on the rail, Eli's hat. Every evening, Taya would light a lantern there before sunset. For him, she'd whisper. For the man who believed we could be more. The wind would rise again, sweeping through the grass, carrying voices and memories, 4 orphans, 1 stranger, and a bond stronger than blood. Because in the Wild West, family wasn't always born. Sometimes, it was found, and built, piece by piece, in the dust and the dawn. 10 years later, the 4 Winds Ranch had become a legend. Cattle grazed as far as the eye could see, windmills turned against the open sky, and every sunrise painted the valley gold. The 4 Apache siblings had turned Eli Cooper's dream into a living empire. Taya had become the matriarch, wise, calm, commanding. Noka oversaw the herds, a master of horses and strategy. Loma managed trade in town, sharp with numbers and sharper with words. And little Kai, no longer little, rode with the confidence of a man twice his age. But progress came knocking. One hot afternoon, a dust cloud appeared on the horizon, not a storm, but a convoy. A long black carriage, wagons full of men and steel rails. At their head rode a man in a gray suit and bowler hat. His name was Silas Granger, president of the Western Continental Railroad Company. When the carriages stopped by the main gate, Taya stepped out, her rifle slung across her shoulder. "Can I help you, mister?" she asked evenly. Granger tipped his hat, smiling thinly. "Afternoon, ma'am. Fine land you've got. We're laying track through the valley, progress, industry, the future. I'm here to make you an offer." "Not for sale," Taya said immediately. He chuckled. "I haven't even told you the number." "Doesn't matter." Granger's smile faded. "I don't think you understand. The government's already granted our line. You're in the way." Noka appeared beside his sister, his hand resting casually on his revolver. "You're on Apache land. You'd best remember who you're talking to." The railroad man's jaw tightened. "You people think you can hold back the world. The iron road will cut through every inch of this frontier, and you can't stop it." Taya's eyes didn't flinch. "We don't need to stop it. We just won't move." Granger tipped his hat again, eyes cold. "Then you've chosen war, ma'am." The convoy turned and rode away in a cloud of dust. That night, the fire at the ranch burned low, the 4 siblings sitting in silence. The desert wind howled softly, whispering danger. Kai finally spoke. "They'll come back." Taya nodded. "Then we'll be ready." 2 weeks later, men with torches arrived at night. They tried to tear down the fences, set fire to the north pasture. But they hadn't expected what the 4 Winds Ranch had become, not just a home, but a fortress of loyalty. When the men rode in, they were met not by fear but by firelight and determination. The Apache siblings and their ranch hands fought back, driving them off without bloodshed but with unmistakable warning. The next morning, Taya rode into town, straight to Granger's office. He looked up, startled, as she slammed a stack of papers on his desk. "You think you can take this land because we're Apache?" she said quietly. "You think we don't understand law? Eli Cooper taught us better than that. We own the deed, the title, the right." Granger glanced at the documents, Eli's original signature, notarized by the county clerk years ago. His face went pale. This can't be." "It can," Taya said. "And it is. You lay 1 inch of track on our soil again, and I'll have your company in front of every judge from here to California." Granger sat frozen. He had power, money, influence, but not the courage these people carried in their blood. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You talk about progress. Let me tell you something, Mr. Granger. Progress isn't stealing, it's surviving. And we've been doing that since before your kind ever saw this land." That year, the railroad changed its route. The 4 Winds Valley stayed untouched. Years later, when travelers took the long way around, they'd see a vast stretch of green in the middle of the desert, 4 riders tending to the land, their banners flying high, and a wooden sign carved with steady hands. 4 Winds Ranch, where family never dies. Every evening, as the sun dipped low, Taya still lit a lantern on the porch, just as Eli Cooper once did. The wind carried her whisper across the valley. "For you, old man. You gave us a chance, and we kept your dream alive." The land stayed free. The people stayed strong. And the legend of the 4 Apache orphans who saved a stranger, and built a future, lived on long after the last train whistle faded from the plains. Because in the Wild West, power fades, gold rusts, and names are forgotten. But family, the kind built by choice and courage, endures forever.